Chakun strikes again, and the man hit by it awakens as Grace Auburn. Having woken up as the daughter of the Duke of Auburn, his mind was still that of a 52-year-old civil servant from his previous life. Falling from her horse and hitting her head, I don't know, remembered everything. With some fellows checking on his fall, he now remembered this was the world of a game where one could enjoy romances with many handsome men. Of course, we know this as an ultimate game. His last memory from his old life was pushing a little boy out of the way of a truck. This was an instance of reincarnation into another world. But why did he, Kenzaburo Tondabayashi, a 52-year-old government worker, have to be reincarnated as the daughter of a duke in an ultimate game? This was too much of a mismatch, even as a joke by the gods. He had enough otaku knowledge to know this reincarnated to another world thing, but he didn't know a single thing about ultimate games. How was he supposed to survive? Suddenly, one of his servants, Josette, came in nervously sweating as she brought Lady Grace her change of clothes. With Grace thanking her, the servant backed away frightened, bumping her head against the door before leaving the clothes and scurrying off. As Grace, he still had the memory of how he used to be until now. Grace had quite a strict personality, always scolding her servants and never thanking them even once. In other words, his role in this life was the villainess of this very ultimate game world. The TV blared with that very villainous saying, "Know your place. This academy is no place for a commoner like you to set foot so brazenly." That was when Kenza had walked in on his daughter, Hinako, playing the game he was in now, Magical Academy, Love and Beast. He could tell it was an ultimate because of all the handsome guys on the cover, and teased his daughter somewhat for playing it in the living room. The daughter was a proud otaku, telling her father about Grace, the villainess who stood in the protagonist's way. The father had some knowledge on this, commenting on how the heroine's rival with spiral curls had been a staple since the 70s, like Ayumi Himekawa from Glass Mask, Madame Butterfly from Aim for the Ace, and Eliza Legan from Candy Candy. Yes, I had to look these all up to understand the references. This guy was a little too old, given both his daughter and I had no idea what he was rambling on about. Comparing that moment to Grace's memory, he was certain this world was almost exactly like the one in the ultimate game Magical Academy Love and Beast. Right now, he was Grace Auburn, the villainess. And starting today, he was a student at the Royal Academy of Magic. He saw a sparkly pink-haired girl, brimming with hope, suddenly trip, spectacularly face-planting. He perceived her as a clumsy girl that the players could easily sympathize with. Anna Dahl was undoubtedly the protagonist of this ultimate game. Kenza had a memory of his daughter explaining Anna being excited about her first day at the academy, but Grace stood in her way because she was a commoner, when most who attended were nobles like Grace. First, Grace had lectured Anna about their difference in social status, and even insulted Anna's beloved family, pushing her to tears. That moment made Anna resolve to study magic hard to prove Grace wrong. Remembering this, Kenza still contemplated on why he was the one who had to be reincarnated into this game world. With Grace stopping Anna, the other students spoke in hushed whispers about Grace's family being the most powerful in the country after the royal family. Grace knew Anna had passed the entrance exam into the school with the highest score, but instead of degrading the heroine, he told Anna her parents must have been very wise, caring, and loving. Oh no, he forgot to act like a villainess and let his true feelings as a parent slip. Anna looked down, crying with tears of joy and gratefulness towards her parents. She never thought someone with a noble status as high as Grace's would say something so kind to her. Grace was stun-locked. The other students watching misinterpreted the situation, thinking Grace had made Anna cry by saying something harsh. So, he dragged Anna away as quickly as he could. Sitting down on a bench together, Anna apologized for losing her composure. It's just that her family wasn't wealthy, but when they found out she had a talent for magic, they worked so hard to save money. She was thankful for the opportunity to study magic because of them, and touched by Grace's kind words. So, Grace led Anna the correct way, by suggesting the method to repay them. Anna already knew she needed to work hard, then get a good job to give her family a better life. However, that was different from Grace's actual answer. He suggested Anna develop her talents to the fullest and live a happy life. From a parent's perspective, that's what he'd want for his own daughter. Anna shrieked acknowledging Grace was right once again, and that her parents had already said the exact same thing to her. After wiping Anna's tears once more, the blonde boy from earlier teased Grace for making someone cry on the first day. Kenza remembered this handsome boy from Grace's memory. He was one of the romance options for the protagonist. As of now, he was Grace's fiancé and the crown prince of the country, whose name he couldn't remember. He continued to make small talk while concurrently using all of his brain power to remember the prince's name. It's not because he had forgotten the prince's name, but being an older man, he often couldn't remember people's names because he had learned so many names in his lifetime, and couldn't immediately pick out the right one. But with Anna greeting the prince, this was Grace's saving grace. The prince congratulated Anna on her exam score, but unfortunately still did not name himself. This made sense though, since according to Grace's knowledge, there was an unspoken rule that people of high status don't introduce themselves first. He needed to introduce the prince to Anna, otherwise things would seem strange. So, Grace introduced her full title to Anna, and then gave Anna the hint that the man before them was the crown prince, causing Anna to shriek while naming him Royal Highness Crown Prince Virgil Vierge. Exactly what Grace needed. The prince then took off, reminding them not to be late for the entrance ceremony, which also coincidentally reminded Kenza of the course of events. His daughter had told him in the game's story, Anna gets insulted by Grace and cries alone in the courtyard. Then meets Prince Virgil, who calms her down. This was the first necessary event for the prince ending. He now wondered if that ending had just hit the triggered requirement. However, Anna was just happy Grace introduced her as a friend. Hearing now that Anna wanted to refer to her as Miss Grace, he was now concerned he might have triggered some other kind of event. Will you like this video and subscribe to my channel? Oh ho ho ho! Here at my Shoujo Weekly, I've got plenty of stories to share with you, involving graceful, rich villainesses. You might even say I've got the best villainess stories here on YouTube. I even have a whole playlist you can watch. So come on, hit that subscribe and give me a like. Wandering the halls, Kenza was proud of himself, given no one had noticed he was an old man inside the body of a duke's daughter. An old man in a wizard outfit suddenly welcomes Grace, and from Grace's memories, Kenza knew this old man was the principal. So, reflexively, he acted the way he would have meeting a principal in his old life, which translated to Grace giving a curtsy and good day to the principal. He was proud of himself once again. He called this elegant cheat skill. And so, Grace finished the opening ceremony as the representative of the freshman students. So far, things have gone just like what he saw at the beginning of the game, and honestly, he was excited to learn about magic. However, the one problem he might have is that the protagonist liked him, when he was supposed to be the villainess. With her non-stop yapping, he told Anna to save her excitement until after their teacher finished her lecture. Anna apologized, and Kenza wondered if what he said sounded enough like a villainess. It was hard for him to be mean to such a sweet girl, but given he was reincarnated as Grace, he needed to act like a villainess as much as possible. Unbeknownst to him though, Anna was lighting up from his statement, thinking of Grace as such a wonderful person. She couldn't believe that even though they had just met, a noblewoman was correcting her shortcomings. Moreover, she believed Grace's behavior was the perfect example of an upper-class lady. Anna felt she needed to work hard not to embarrass Grace, so she needed to learn how to behave at this school from Grace. She noticed Grace looking serious at her textbook, and was looking back and forth between the textbook and the podium. She surmised Grace was imagining what class would be like before it started, and thought of her as amazing. But in reality, Kenza was recalling when going through books, his fingers would slip, so he'd have to often lick them. He was far-sighted and also couldn't see up close. His eyes also took time to adjust focus. But now, as 15-year-old Grace, none of those things were issues. This was simply liberating. While Anna was fixated on following Grace's example, the teacher then suddenly summoned a cabinet, where upon calling the name of a student, they needed to come up to take one of the eggs from inside. In the prince's room, his buddy, August Lion, decided to come in for a chat. August wanted to know which freshman Virgil had decided should join the student council. So, Virgil described members to be chosen based on their grades, family background, and character. He brought up Anna Dahl, who scored the highest on the entrance exam, as a preferred choice. Then, Grace for her grades and family background. August didn't think Grace was a bad choice, but thought of her as very strict. and suggested she might not get along with a commoner like Anna. Initially, the prince was worried about that as well, but now thinks Grace has changed a bit lately. He's decided to keep an eye on her before making a decision. Reaching the school cafeteria, Anna was excited to learn she could eat as much as she wanted here. Grace maintained his composure, despite also being excited by an all-you-can-eat buffet. Using his elegant cheat skill, he conveyed the buffet style to be simply quite wonderful. The two then overheard some girls complaining to the staff. These 3 girls were upset that they had to carry food to their table by themselves because their servants weren't allowed at school, while conveying their parents were counts. The staff member clarified that to be the case, as the academy was principled in making sure the students could cultivate self-reliance and independence in daily life. It was written in their educational policy. Kenza thought the 3 were acting more like spoiled brats than villainesses. As Grace Auburn, he should never emulate them. He had Anna follow her as he carried his own food tray, earning the compliments of the staff member while the 3 girls were losing it. He found the food to be quite delicious, and the 3 nervous girls scurried off in embarrassment. Enjoying the food, he reflected on the fact that while civilization here was similar to that of 19th century Europe, the food and hygiene were that of modern Japan. Nothing like the real world at all. However, the students and teachers here were living beings, so he felt he should treat them with the same respect he'd give anyone. That said, he had only the most basic manners as a commoner. He used to eat everything on his plate, and give thanks for the food, also thanking the chef. He kindly gave his tray to the staff, and gracefully told him to pass on that the food was incredibly delicious to the chef. The girls were in awe over Grace's etiquette. They all wanted to imitate her. In fact, this behavior later became an academy tradition, and thus began the colorful isekai life of Kenzaburo Tondabayashi. Kenza groomed himself every morning, getting ready for work. One day, when exchanging pleasantries with his daughter, he noticed her merchandise mug from Love and Beast, and he was proud because that's exactly what he taught her. They ecstatically fist-bumped to the idea of merchandise truly shining when it was being used, while also having bought extra to be preserved. Heading out, he took note of the trendy design the merch had, as he couldn't read the name on it. He had always tried to use the stairs to keep himself healthy. By not twisting his body and raising his arm and leg on the same side, he could efficiently move without exhausting himself. He learned that from a battle manga he liked. At the city government office, he would sort his papers using an abacus, eat the cafeteria curry every day, and give his thanks and compliments to the chef. When meeting about the design for a city traffic safety PSA poster, his associates had discussed using a popular anime in order to promote it. He got incredibly passionate, because with the characters being cheerful on the poster, it was disrespecting the source material, and this caused him to ramble at a breakneck pace. By 5 o'clock, that was another day of work done. He never asked for much, and he'd do any task given to him. He was happy with his life. But that very evening, he got hit by a truck trying to push a small child out of the way. Now being reincarnated in another world, he intended to fulfill his duty as the person he was reincarnated as. However, he was still unsure of exactly what he had to do. So far, he's managed to adapt to this Ultimate Game world. The biggest obstacle was that he didn't know much about Ultimate games. But one thing was clear: these handsome men were the romance options. The prince, as student council president, introduced his friends as fellow members. There was August, the head of the security department, Richard Versal, the vice president, and Pierre Guimau, the secretary. All the guys were in their second year, and the prince would introduce the girls to the other members at another time. Kenza remembered the boys from the cover of Love and Beast, and surmised the goal of the game was to have Anna, the protagonist, enter a romantic relationship with one of these romance options, and that his role as Grace the Villainess was to interfere with that. Anna clamored, hearing she and Grace were being invited as members of the student council. This wasn't too relevant to Kenza, because he was fixated on how he could interfere with Anna's romance. As a commoner, Anna wondered if it was alright that she was joining, and to that fact, Grace conveyed that student council members were chosen by the president based on their academic performances and family background. And since Anna had the highest exam scores while being a commoner, that was simply proof of her exceptional abilities. August was surprised. He was sure Grace would have said something like, "It would be a disgrace to the school to allow a commoner in the student council." Kenza now realized he messed up by accidentally giving an objective evaluation like the ones for a subordinate performance review. He wished Anna would stop giving him that, "So you meant it when you called me a friend?" look. He had to calm down. Right now, he was Grace Auburn, the Villainess. He shouldn't be satisfied with just keeping the heroine away from the romance options. Coming up with his scheme, he began to giggle. Now telling Anna if she planned to join the student council, she'd have to learn about nobles, manners, and etiquette. And he was going to drill every single bit of those things into her. Ha! That's it. Kenza nailed the perfect oppressive attitude. But with him now adding that he'd thoroughly impart all of his knowledge of noble manners onto her, he could immediately tell he was bad at this whole villainous thing. Anna responded with joy that she'd do her best, and let off a quick glow. As the prince acknowledged Grace's great work, he glowed as well. And so did each of the boys? I wonder if this is like part of an ultimate affection level increase. Outside the council room, as Anna got pumped up for her new student council member role, Kenza considered which romance route she would end up in. Would it be Prince Virgil, the lean, macho, handsome security man, the quiet, long-haired, handsome man, or the diligent, black-haired, handsome man? Kenza could, in fact, not remember all those fancy foreign names at once. Outside for lecture, they began practical magic class using magic circles. The teacher displayed they could write incantations inside the magic circle using the ancient magical alphabet, displaying her spell of light magic particles. One of the students asked an important question. Why didn't they just use regular language for spells? And the teacher explained that the thoughts of non-magic users who could read the words would mix in, dispersing the spell's power. Anna concluded that to use spells to their maximum potential, one needed to use words only they understood. Hearing this, the teacher goes deeper into the lore. Magic circles were used to access the power of words, a power that dwelled within the words themselves. However, for words to contain power, they needed to have history, having been used by many people for many generations. Which is why the ideal words for magic were from the ancient language that were once used, but are no longer used today. This got the gears turning in Kenza's head. He wrote the Japanese word for fire, since kanji didn't exist in this ultimate game world. Then, adding a second one, an intense flame burst, causing Anna to praise him and glow once more. A student in the back got jealous, discounting the power of Grace's spell, since he'd been studying magic circles with a tutor. As Anna was displaying her brightly glowing circle, we hear some students scream as a giant golem appears, causing havoc. Apparently, the jealous student from before had given the golem too much magic and passed out. It was heading their way, being attracted to Anna's magic. Kenza had no choice. He decided to borrow Anna's circle, casting Pause, which brought the golem to a stop. A perfect save. While the teacher scolded the jealous student, he'd be getting a lecture later. Kenza was relieved, because writing in a hurry, he accidentally slightly misspelled the word. But it seems this world still allowed functional spells, despite him writing what could be translated as Pause with a Z. At the Auburn estate, Josette, the maid in training, reflected on how weird Miss Grace had been acting. She thought about how Grace was being so nice. Perhaps the Duke's daughter was scheming, because people always said she looked like an angel, but was a devil inside. These days, though, she overheard her fellow servants speaking about how Grace had become calmer for some reason. However, the maid surmised it wasn't that simple. Like this calm demeanor was more like a calm before a storm. Like, what if she already decided to fire them and she was just being nice until the day she informed them? Akin to fattening livestock before selling them. Josette panicked at the idea. She believed if someone were to get sold, it'd definitely be her because she was the clumsiest. As she dropped and broke a tea kettle in front of Grace, Kenza went to console her, causing her to break into tears thinking she was going to get sold off now. She begged for forgiveness, hysterically asking to at least be sold somewhere she could continue to work as a maid, and that even if Grace decided to eat her, she was sure she wouldn't taste good. Kenza didn't quite get it, until he put together the rumors spreading between the maids lately and his experience as a father. He kindly told Josette he'd never sell her off somewhere. People made mistakes no matter who they were, and reasoned she as a trainee was bound to make more than others. He wouldn't fire everyone who made a mistake, because if he did, no one would become a proper maid. Josette wondered if what had happened was really okay. Kenza figured since Grace had been so strict up until now, the sudden kindness was probably confusing Josette. He decided to be even kinder, offering his treats to the little maid. confusing Josette even more. She initially had hesitation, doubt, confusion, fear, and bewilderment. But taking a bite of the cookie, she totally forgot all her fears in an instant. After that, Grace decided to take the broken kettle to Meister Waltz in order to fix it. The man was a dwarf, and also the official Auburn family craftsman, and seeing the kettle, he was confident it'd only take 20 minutes. Kenza decided to watch the repair job, enjoying the work since dwarves were the finest artisan race in all fantasy worlds. But now seeing the intricate details, he started to wonder if this world was more than just part of an Ultimate game. Seeing the fixed kettle, Josette was amazed. It was as if it had never been broken. The Meister then commented it had been a while since he'd seen Grace, so he got a little fired up. He reminded her of the days when she was little and had come to his shack to watch him all the time. She had always watched him so enthusiastically. Kenza did recognize that memory. Grace liked to watch craftsmen and gardeners work, but when she started receiving formal education as a lady, she gradually stopped doing it because it wasn't ladylike. She grew strict with herself and others and became difficult to deal with, even for the servants. That was what made her into a villainess. However, her true nature had always been much brighter. Looking around the shop and its pleasant atmosphere, she asked Walls if she could visit again, and he of course reminded her this was the garden of her mansion. She could come by whenever she wanted. So on another day, Grace asked him to make her an abacus. The halls of the Royal Magic Academy serve as the setting for the Ultimate game Magical Academy Love and Beast. The student council was an autonomous body led by Prince Virgil and comprised of handpicked students only. However, Kenza couldn't keep up with the names of the guys without them written on a cheat sheet. Nevertheless, this was a school for those of the aristocracy. The members of the council were chosen for their talents and social standing, which meant they'd do their best governing the student body before eventually settling into positions of power that see them ruling over the kingdom. That also made them prime candidates for romancing. One thing in particular Kenza started fixating on in regards to all the love interests in Ultimate games is that they had hairstyles that took up a great deal of data. Their hair was far more elaborate than any of the background characters, leading him to the conclusion that flashy hairstyles were intrinsically linked with popularity in this world. So, is that true? With that in mind, he considered Anna's opinion of their hairstyles should play heavily into who she decides to approach romantically. As Grace, with his hair flowing and sparkling in the wind, he asked Anna how she felt about people with full manes of hair that were kept meticulously groomed. Anna's eyes glimmered. She admitted to idolizing people with gorgeous flowing tresses, but they were not on the same page. Now Kenza was betting on Anna's choice to be the vice president and his long locks. All while Anna was thinking about what Lady Grace did to keep her hair so curly and beautiful. Putting that aside, Kenza's personal hope right now was for Anna to end up with the partner who made her the most happy. He thought back to his daughter telling him the hardest love interest to successfully romance was Prince Virgil. While at first glance, he seemed like a nice guy who gets along with anyone and everyone. However, being raised as the crown prince, he's unable to resist judging other people based entirely on how useful they are to the kingdom, which is why the protagonist had to focus on making her talents shine in the student council to get his attention. Kenza thought that must be rough for both the MC and the prince himself. After all, if he couldn't help but judge even his potential lovers through that lens, then being born as next in line for the throne must be incredibly stressful. While observing Anna and Grace working on the council's budget, the prince evaluated the two exactly as aforementioned, particularly noting Grace had become more affable as of late. He's not sure what changed, but accepted it as a welcome development. He couldn't forget, of course, she was his fiancée. That being said, their engagement was only made out of necessity to the kingdom, and despite the fact that they've known each other since childhood, he had never harbored romantic feelings for her. He accepted their betrothal was for the best, since he was born to be the next ruler. There wasn't more he could ask for in a wife than someone who proved useful in bringing prosperity to the kingdom. With Anna getting stuck on calculations, Kenza pulled out his new abacus, claiming it was a calculator used in the Far East. Made by their house's most skilled craftsmen, of course. Grace solved the budget using the abacus with no problem, and I would explain how it works for you, if I knew how to use one. Anna was quite amazed at Grace's mathematical talent, despite Kenza's grievance mastering math work by hand before he had the convenience of a computer. Virgil stood up suddenly. expressing his astoundedness because Grace had always been vocal over her struggle with numbers. He wanted to know when she learned to handle them with such proficiency. Crap. Kenza realized he might have blown his cover, so he nervously made up the excuse he learned through a stroke of luck. Mere happenstance. He spoke of visiting the library one day, when a book suddenly fell off the shelf and opened to a page about the subject of dividing by 9. Supposedly, he had just happened to remember that page. As the prince reiterated Grace's mere coincidence, Kenza for sure knew he blew it, but took the focus off himself to say they should be acknowledging Anna, who demonstrated her usefulness by earnestly crunching all these numbers most people would find tedious. The prince was keen to Grace's tactic here, remembering she was a competitive woman who resented failure. He believed she conquered her shortcomings by spending long hours brushing up on mathematics in secret, yet was choosing to hide that fact, even going further by sharing the accolades with one of her fellow students. His stocks for Grace were going to the moon. Seeing she was talented plus humble, he started to think, wow, she's my fiancée? I'm starting to think she might be an unbelievable asset to the kingdom, sparkling 3 times in a row, and thus, the prince experienced a heart-pounding thrill like never before. While the members of the student council were always the talk of the town, one of the especially hot topics asked which one of them was the strongest. August was heavily favored due to being a guardian who specialized in martial arts and could augment his physical abilities with magic. The other top contender was Richard, a sword master who used mythical techniques of a fighting style passed down by his family. The two dueled, displaying an incredible performance that Kenza couldn't help but take notice of. His expectations were pretty low since this world was based on an ultimate game, but their battle had a real punch to it. It ended in a draw, when suddenly a bug landed on August's back. He asked Richard for help. However, Richard refused because bugs drove him buggy. Kenza then pulled it off, astonished to see it was a Miyama stag beetle, the superstar of insectum that all bug-loving boys loved. Its large mandible and distinct head shape was a work of art. He thought it was so cool. August thanked him and told Grace to squish it already. However, it'd be a cold day in hell before Kenza would choose to do something he found cruel and foolish. He wondered if the boys of this world didn't understand the awesomeness of bugs. But now thinking about it some more, he remembered catching and collecting bugs wasn't much of a hobby outside of Japan. He summoned a magic circle, writing the word return to send the beetle back to its home in the forest, then told everyone all living things were part of nature's grand masterpiece, and that taking the life of even a bug without good reason was unbecoming of those with noble blood. Her compassion made August's heart thud, and he and Anna sparkled. He wondered if he was falling in love, immediately lighting off 3 more sparkles. Later, Richard showed the girls the vault within the academy that housed priceless pieces of weaponry donated by many of the illustrious graduates. Keeping them in good condition was another important duty of the student council. For example, there was the holy axe known as Gargantua. He rambled on and on about the intricacies of the weapon, warning them that one must be careful when wielding it, or they'd have an accident. Next, he rambled about the enchanted shield, Archelon, of which anyone who attacked might find themselves between a block and a hard place. These puns were intentional. Virgil then whispered to the girls that the main reason Richard was always quiet was because he incessantly told dad jokes, and nearly everyone warned him against talking while out in public. Richard moved on to another pun involving armor, then swords, but Kenza countered with a double pun, saying a student council member wielding 2 swords could make a stab at giving the students a proper education. Richard was flabbergasted, believing Grace to be a true master with the multi-puns. He accepted defeat, and not long afterwards, rumors spread like wildfire throughout the academy that Grace reigned supreme among the student council. In a letter to Anna's parents, she explained she was doing great after her first month living at the dorms of the academy. She enjoyed the company of the student council, especially Lady Grace, who she described as a role model both academically and socially. There were also 2 additional gentlemen among the first-year members of the council. Prince Lucas Vierge, the second prince who was cheerful and sociable, always wearing a bright smile, and Lambert Balance, a man of great intelligence whose grades were among the very best. However, His attitude towards her seemed particularly stern for some reason, seeing him questioning why she hadn't finished tabulating her numbers when he already had. He condescendingly brought up how strange it was, since she had the highest marks on the entrance exam, and asked how she scored higher than him when she was slower. He accused her of slacking off, but thankfully, Kenza interjected to ease the tension. Since his tabulations were already complete, he used this opportunity to have Lambert add his to the rest instead of continuing to harp on Anna. After he left, Anna sighed, wishing she knew why Lambert hated her so much. However, Lucas didn't think Bert acted the way he did because he hated her. She didn't understand, so he elaborated. Bert was the current adopted heir to the prestigious Balance family. He was originally born as the third son of a bankrupt noble family out in the sticks. That made him no different from a member of the peasantry. But because he proved himself very smart from a young age and showed great promise with magic, he was able to enroll at the academy. Anna and Bert shared similar circumstances. Hearing this, Kenza surmised Bert must view Anna as a rival, and his attitude came from the fact he didn't want to lose to her. Anna thought being a rival meant he hated her even more. However, Kenza explained the opposite of affection to be indifference, not hate. The fact that she believed he hated her was actually proof he paid a great amount of attention to Anna. In Kenza's opinion, Lambert's route must be the easiest. There was nothing to worry about since his love flag was already set. Anna became quizzical over the word flag, thinking sometimes Lady Grace spoke of things she couldn't wrap her head around. Grace had a plan ready, but before that, scolded Prince Lucas about making paper planes in the council office, especially using important documents. The next day, with the help of an abacus, Anna was able to finish her council work in record time. Grace then pointed out how she was able to beat Bert to the punch, having taught her how to use the calculator. Bert questioned how Grace could judge him when they weren't calculating on level playing fields. However, Kenza gracefully explained there was no competition. They did tabulations to keep the council running properly. He then presented an extra abacus he happened to bring with him today, and offered it to Lambert, who accepted. Hook, line, sinker. He knew Lambert was the curious type. He then had Anna instruct Bert on how to use the device. This was all something Kenza had worked out with Anna yesterday, knowing tsundere characters like Bert were almost always total pushovers. Anna was doing her best to prove she could be useful to the council and the academy as well. And in typical tsundere fashion, Bert responded, well, I suppose if you insist, I'll allow you to teach me a thing or two, while flustered and lighting up. At this moment, Anna was euphoric. While she got the teaching, Kenza presented another abacus for Lucas to use. She wanted him to learn as well. That way, it'd give Bert someone to compete with for extra motivation. Kenza knew Bert was easy enough, but characters like Lucas were tough to get a read on, meaning his route must be difficult. Since he was more the mischievous type, he hoped his love flag was also properly set with Anna now, but then remembered maybe the Villainess shouldn't be trying to help complete love routes. Oh well, too late for that now. He had to scold Lucas once more, this time for strumming the abacus like an instrument. A month has passed since Kenza and Anna have been studying magic at the Royal Academy. Now they were stepping into a new stage of their magical education, as we see Anna summoning a Pegasus. The students' reception to Anna's beast was meh, because the particular creature was pretty common and unspectacular. Grenna appraised Anna's beast to have the win attribute, and Anna was very pleased. Kenza thought it was quite fitting for the heroine, and now after all this time of getting to know about the love part from the Magical Academy Love and Beast title, we flash back to where Hinako explained that beasts were servants like familiars. In this game, the protagonist is given a beast egg after entering the academy, where in a month's time, the egg would hatch. And since the beast has its own attribute, it allows the user more magic type options. Many players believe magic lessons only begin once they get to this part of the game. Also, the type of beast the heroine gets drastically affects the story and route she gets after. As Grace, Kenza praised Anna, asking if she'd be focusing on learning wind magic from now on. Some of the students got confused, bringing up that wind magic was good with earth magic, or water magic, maybe fire magic? They're clearly confused, so we can get a lore/tutorial explanation on the magic system of the game. Kenza played along, asking their teacher to give a quick reminder of how elemental attributes work, which also earned him a quick affection raise from Anna. So, 4 attributes: fire, water, wind, and earth. Fire and water counter each other, earth and wind counter each other. Water supports wind, wind supports fire, fire supports earth, earth supports water. Grena emphasizes the importance of support magic, because while fire in this world is effective against water-based enemies, against stronger monsters, the type advantage is not enough. So, with support from wind magic, the fire can strengthen and defeat bigger enemies. Kenza contemplated this, thinking about how in games he played before, he'd just reroll until he got what beast he wanted. He posed the idea to Anna, asking if it was possible to reroll, would she? Anna responded that she wouldn't, giving Kenza a fond reminder of his daughter. Then suddenly, Prince Virgil and August made their entrance. They were here to watch their fellow student council members summon their beasts. So of course, the two had to flex their own. Prince Virgil's beast is a griffin with wind attribute, while August is a Garuda with fire, both of rare species and incredible mana. The prince complimented Anna's honest beast, a reflection of its master. He believed it to be the perfect partner for her. August added it was up to the master to develop the beast's potential to its max. Kenza took this as the two guys' affinity being high with Anna. Standing in a summoning circle, Kenza thought back to a month ago where he stood before Grena to make a contract with his egg. The eggs were grown then by being supplied with mana from their masters. He was lax. Since the protagonist's beast had already been born, he didn't think anyone would take interest in the Villainess's beast. Little did he know, August wanted Grace's beast to be fire type. Virgil wanted it to be wind type. They'd be managing the kingdom as husband and wife after all. And Anna was wishing Grace's beast would be wind type just like hers. These three were interested in Grace's beast at the very least. As light burst from Kenza's egg, he thought back to Hinako telling him she wouldn't re-roll for beasts. She wasn't really the try-hard type to begin with. She felt like even though it was just a game, that it'd be a bit sad to make it like it was never born in the first place. At this moment, Kenza absolutely agreed, especially since the world he was in was real and couldn't be reset. He'd accept whatever beast was born, no matter what. But he never expected out of the egg to pop both a mini Kenza and Grace? They appeared to be sleeping. No one understood what was happening. Kenza overheard a girl's voice saying, Fuse it? How? Directly with my hand? He recognized it as his daughter's voice. A screen then popped in front of him, and from that, 2 hands came out, clasping the mini Kenza and Grace together, creating a mini red dragon. And while the event was certainly strange, everyone put what happened aside so that Grena could handle the appraisal. The teacher was shocked to discover the beast was an ancient dragon, a legendary beast, and it possessed both fire and water attributes. The prince was in disbelief. Everyone knew beasts could only have one attribute, but on top of having 2, it had attributes that directly opposed each other. Anna just took this as Grace being amazing, as usual. We moved to Hinako, 20 years old, born to an otaku mother and an otaku father. She was an otaku by blood. When doing a challenge run of Magical Academy Love and Beast the other day, she got a call from her mother giving the bad news that her father was in an accident. The doctor explained Kenza's head was hit hard. However, the test showed there was no damage to his brain and no noticeable external trauma. For some reason though, Kenza wasn't regaining consciousness, and based on brain scans, it seemed like he was in a state similar to dreaming. The hospital planned for more extensive examinations moving forward. Hinako tried to console her mother by looking at the bright side of things. She believed that one day, he'd probably jump out of bed and say, "You fool, Jotaro! I live again thanks to you." The mother played along, responding, "Yare yare. Looks like you're the real one." But weeb jokes aside, Hinako was sure her dad would be fine. She heard the kid he saved was alright as well, making her dad just like his favorite tokusatsu hero. She believed there's no way he wouldn't wake up. Arriving back at home, Hinako discovered the TV was already on with her favorite game, and weirdly, her controller wasn't moving the game forward like it normally would. The TV remote wasn't turning off the TV either. Looking closely at the scene where Anna had her first quarrel with Grace, the dialogue was strange, since Grace was telling the heroine her parents must have been very wise and caring. Then, looking at the name for Grace, it had in parentheses, Kenzaburo. She couldn't believe it. That evening, she explained it to her mother, sounding like a crazy person declaring her dad's consciousness to be inside the game, and her mother accepted it immediately. People from her generation read the novel The Never-Ending Story in middle school, then moved on to other countless isekai stories. Mitsuko wasn't going to allow her daughter to underestimate her credentials as an otaku. She watched Crest of the Royal Family, Mash and Hero Wataru, and NG Knight Ramune and 40 when they aired. Guys, I don't understand any of these references. She brought up Rei Earth, Fushigi Yugi, the 12 Kingdoms. She really was a fast-talking otaku. She brought up Mecha Isekai, OVA Isekai, Chronicles of Narnia. Too many shows that Hinako had to refocus her. Hinako then explained the situation as it appeared to her, where the choices that usually appeared weren't showing up. However, she could at least proceed with the story by pressing the A button and open the log containing the dialogues to previous scenes. They reviewed the moments Grace complimented the chef using her elegant cheat skill, dividing by 9, and the cringy dad joke about making a stab at giving proper education. That was enough to convince them it was totally Kenza. They now believed in order to bring him back, they needed to finish the game. So the next morning, when the mother had woken up, Hinako was still going, having played all night. She detailed the flow of time between here and the game world to be different, since just that night alone was already a month in Love and Beast. She then suddenly got a notice to lend a hand in Kenza's beast summoning. This was the first time in the story she'd been given the chance to do something. But she didn't understand, since beast summoning should be purely RNG without any help. There was only one choice in their minds with this. They had to help. That's when the mini Kenza and Grace appeared, and they were given the option to fuse a beast by combining Grace and Kenza's mana. Hinako had to do it by hand, and reaching in to do it, she couldn't believe the game meant it literally. While the principal found Grace's dragon to be fascinating, it was not his first time seeing one. He had even witnessed a beast wielding 2 elements as well previously. Kenza figured the strange ritual during the summoning had something to do with it. The principal then wanted Grace to test spell casting with the beast, and so, Kenza sent a fiery blast at a target, which was powerful enough to receive Anna's praise. But then, commanding Orion to shoot a water spell, the little dragon simply looked around quizzically. The principal thought of the name Grace had picked out for the dragon to be charming. However, she explained it was just the name that was written on its stats screen, and it also gave Kenza the option to change the familiar's attributes. No one else could see the screen, however. With the attribute switching, Orion's body changed from red to bright blue, and with Kenza casting the spell for shoot, Orion fired an intense hydroblast. And while switching Orion's form worked just fine, it seemed Kenza didn't know a way to use both elements at once. Now that the demonstration was finished, the principal pondered on why Grace's beast was the only one that manifested 2 different elemental abilities. To everyone's surprise, Grace willingly answered. She responded that she felt the presence of someone else inside of her, like a new soul had been born, distinct from the one she possessed before, her old self and current self. The combination of those 2 souls must have contributed to the creation of Orion. August couldn't believe it, but Virgil thought it made sense. He cited the drastic change in Grace's personality as of late. The principal, however, thought she was just taking a step into maturity by embracing a whole new version of herself. He had heard from her parents that she'd always had an acute sense of responsibility. Hence, she must have been driven by the need to successfully establish herself at the academy, and that inadvertently gave rise to a new personality within her. I think this guy totally missed the mark. Regardless, he spoke of an important responsibility she must fulfill. At the end of every semester, they hold an immersive learning event called the Magic Exhibition. Usually, only the most accomplished members of the student council are chosen to participate, which is why he personally wanted Grace to take part and demonstrate the power of her beast to everyone. Grace objected. However, Anna was over the moon for her participation. And so, Kenza accepted and the fellow council members offered their aid. Turning back to just after the beast summoning, Hinako and her mother were discussing what had transpired. The mother wanted to know more about the tiny Grace and Kenza, to which Hinako remembered the tiny Grace from her character introduction screen. Noting the combined powers, the mother remarked this was definitely one of those cheat skills that often popped up in isekai reincarnation stories. With the game requesting the player to name the dragon familiar, Hinako picked Orion. It was the name of a little dinosaur character from her favorite childhood anime that her dad always watched with her. She was hoping he'd realized she was the one who named it. However, he was dense, only surmising the staff of Magical Academy must also be fans of the same anime. Later, when the time was needed for Orion to switch to water attribute, Hinako needed to turn off autoplay and actually switch it manually. This means her dad needed her at the right times. Otherwise, he'd be stuck. She felt unsure of her ability to make it to the end of the game, and that's when her mom reminded her, they raised her. Hinako was invigorated with the belief and power of her otaku bloodline. They then moved to the scene where Grace explained everything to the principal and her friends. Kenza's inner monologue detailed this being a good opportunity for him to come clean and explained that he was inhabiting Grace's body. Hinako was concerned, remembering there was a branch in Virgil's route where Grace actually gets possessed by a demon and ends up fighting Anna. She was worried with her dad opening up that they might assume this all to be the work of an evil spirit. However, witnessing the elegant cheat skill proccing in action, it caused his explanation to come off as pretty ambiguous. In turn, pretty much everyone there misunderstood in a good way. This became the trigger for the magical exhibition event. Not bad by any means, but this was where Anna and her love interest got a big intimacy boost. However, the story didn't seem to be going that way at all. In the school library, a member of the drama club, Francette, was ecstatic over the different stories she had read that were tear-jerking. She thought about using some of the material as inspiration for the drama club's next big performance. To her, the library was pure bliss. She wished she could just live in it forever. Kinda reminds me of another bookworm that you could watch my video on after this one. She suddenly spotted Grace and Anna incoming, and this sent her into a starstruck rant. She thought of Grace Auburn as absolutely stunning. And then next to her, Anna, the Academy's first student of peasant blood because of her top scores. The valedictorian of valedictorians, Francette drooled with a bloody nose at the thought of their friendship that transcended the limits of social status. She ended up spilling over in a bloody mess. Grace's goal here was to study up on the finer details of magic and beasts. Kenza especially wanted more knowledge, considering he had so many questions about Orion. How it ended up with both water and fire attributes, or what those floating hands were during the ritual. He was also unsure about the voice he'd heard before as well. Kenza then noticed Virgil spying on them from above. Pierre then came running towards them, who, as a reminder, was the student council secretary and attendant to the crown prince. But Kenza completely forgot Pierre's name until Anna said it first. Pierre had come to them looking for Prince Virgil. Although he was an outstanding attendant who perfectly managed the prince's schedule and everyday affairs, he was also businesslike and adamant to a fault, which occasionally put so much pressure on the prince that he was forced to hide from him just to catch a break. Furthermore, when the old Grace learned of this, she blamed Pierre and often chewed him out. Just the pains of serving royalty. Pierre apologized for losing Virgil and swore it wouldn't happen again. But in return, Grace told him to look at the situation differently. Seeing as how Virgil avoided him, he should also be off the hook from serving the prince during these times. Kenza explained people were not designed to work every minute of every day. The more fatigued they become, the more the quality of their work declines. Taking breaks was key to ensure everyone stayed at their best. Pierre was stunned by the magnanimous perspective. Anna thought of the argument as genius. Grace complimented Pierre's work ethic, and Pierre was honored by Grace's words, although still a bit uptight. Kenza then asked about study materials for beasts. However, Pierre's knowledge on the subject was unfortunately too shallow, so the girls had him present his beast at the very least. Named Pollux, a water-type gargoyle. Anna noted that with the prince having wind attribute on his beast, Pierre's water type was probably the perfect support. He proudly served as the prince's support during last year's magic exhibition. Pierre then extended his helping hand anytime to Grace, knowing she'd one day be married to Virgil. However, Kenza wasn't quite so certain, since there was no guarantee Grace would end up as his wife until they were officially married. Virgil wouldn't take this quietly, jumping down from the second floor, asking what his fiancée meant by her words. Bad move though, because Pierre had been looking for him the entire time. Anna wondered how he was able to hear in on their conversation. So, the prince explained it was because of his wind magic. He could create tunnels of air that carried sounds from far away. Taking notice of the prince's skill in wind magic, Kenza pushed Anna onto him, suggesting the prince teach her all about it. Kenza was trying to lead Anna further along Virgil's route by raising their intimacy level. The prince accepted gracefully. However, Anna tried to modestly decline. So, Kenza felt like this was a good chance for him to play the Villainess. He told Anna, "Oh please, would you get down from your high horse? This training is not meant for your benefit whatsoever. I am merely thinking ahead to the magical exhibition where I expect you to serve as my support. I will not stand for an assistant who only knows second-rate magic." This definitely had the opposite effect Kenza was going for though, only making Anna more excited and affectionate, knowing he was choosing her as his assistant. Everyone supported Grace's kind words, making Kenza wonder why this always happened. August and Richard began their battle of the beasts, fire versus water, blow for blow. Hinako and her mother were amazed seeing the fight choreography, as the battle scenes were incredible despite this being an Ultimate game. The boys were doing a mock battle for Grace because she'd never seen a magic exhibition before. Hinako had to give it to her dad. Despite him being 52, he swallowed his pride asking kids younger than him for coaching. Mitsuko remarked that Kenza had always been a boy at heart for as long as she'd known him. He used to always say, "Age doesn't matter. Anyone with skill is worth learning from." He was constantly amazed seeing talented artists pop up as high schoolers within the otaku industry. Hinako wondered if her dad's personality was the very reason his mind was guided into the world of the game. Thanking the boys for their demonstration, Anna pointed out since the two had opposing elements, their battles were always quite the impressive display. Richard told the girls not to tell anyone, because their battles were secret information. Kenza pointed out how August seemed to specialize in defense while Richard in offense. That's what made the two a special pair, even in magic. They were both proud and destined to be commanders in the royal knighthood. One would be the shield, and the other the sword. They've trained extensively to fill those roles since childhood. Noticing Anna's praise of them, Kenza considered keeping their routes available for Anna to follow. Anna then pointed out the cliffside that had been damaged from the exhibition. There seemed to be big bones from some kind of creature inside the cliff. Kenza at first observed them to be dinosaur bones. However, August had no clue what that was. People in this world refer to them as lost bones, and legend has it, they're a result of someone's failed attempt at creating monsters. August personally didn't think of them as anything special. His explanation made sense to Kenza, because back in the day, people used to call dinosaur bones on Earth ill-fated experiments of God. The scientists of this ultimate must have settled on a similar conclusion. August then called for Anna to try hitting the cliff with her magic. Summoning Sirius, she shot a powerful gale. Even the boys were surprised a new student could showcase such skill. They were a little disappointed since the exhibition they put on was the same as last year, and could now see they'd hardly made any improvements since. And while the clash between water and fire may be flashy, they'd barely managed to tap into the true potential of their beasts. Kenza could see using fire magic only for defense was a huge waste, and Richard's icicle shots didn't seem to capitalize on his sword skills at all. He wondered if there was a better way to call in the power between beast and sorcerer. Then suddenly, out from the cliff bursted a skeletal monster. With August blocking the attack, the boys called the beast a dragon skeleton. These bones were a type of monster. Not dead at all, actually. Kenza then concluded that Anna's magic likely was the reason this monster awakened. Her magic was so powerful, it drew monsters near her. With the monsters going for an attack, August blocked again. The boys wanted the girls to head back to the academy for assistance. They were going to hold it off. Kenza knew he and Anna hadn't undergone any combat training yet and might get in their way. The girls began to run off, but stopped, seeing the boys weren't handling the monster too well. So, looking at their magic circles, Kenza considered inscribing spells to evoke the best of both the boys' abilities. Grace drew the words sword for Richard and shield for August, and their beasts changed to a shield and sword. They didn't even know beasts could do that. August shot an intense flame, while Richard finished with an icy slash, vanquishing the enemy. The boys thanked Grace for her help, but Kenza assured them it was just a stroke of luck that she knew the perfect spells to inscribe. He wasn't expecting them to take a knee and swear unwavering loyalty to him. He wasn't asking for all that, and also wondered what that sparkling light that happened all the time was about. Hinako explained that happened anytime an intimacy meter got a boost. I was right. Kenza wished they just aimed their affections at Anna instead. The courtyard of Royal Magic Academy is furnished with a barrier that prevents any spells from going outside of its walls. Thus, it is used as a training ground for students to practice magic. Here, Kenza and Anna summoned Orion and Sirius, combining magic to create a fiery tornado. Greta observed Anna's wind magic serving to fan the flames of Grace's fire. Both she and the principal were excited to see next week's magic exhibition. After practice was over for the day, Kenza became fixated on Orion's peculiar behavior. He noticed the dragon trying to emphasize something more than once. This was frustrating Hinako. She wished there was some way to send her dad a message to let him know she was watching him. The fact that she could see what was happening in the world of L&B means she was probably supposed to do something to help her dad beat the game, but the only thing she could do now was switch Orion's attributes between fire and water. She then noticed the music changed and 3 sprites approached her father, wanting a moment of his time. Hinako then realized these 3 were the snobby NPCs who were a part of Grace's entourage in the regular version of the game. The 3 pointed out it was quite a bad look for an esteemed daughter of a duke to entrust a lowly commoner like Anna with such a key role. Rumors were flying all over and putting Grace's reputation at stake. Some have gone as far as to suggest it wouldn't just cause the duke to lose face, but become a blight upon the whole academy. Hinako noticed the 3 snobs' art suddenly got bigger. Did the resolution actually improve after her father got more familiar with characters? One of them then brought up that Anna Doll was a charlatan who spoke ill of Grace behind her back, and that Anna's relationship with her was for nothing more than to reap the benefits of nobility. She boasted to all her plebeian friends about how she buttered Grace up. All the lies started really pissing Hinako off. She pressed a button on her controller out of anger, causing Orion to let off a flame that scared the snobs. Hinako wondered if that actually did control him or was just a coincidence. After getting the 3 girls' names, Kenza turned it around by telling them all of his conduct was closely tied to the reputation of the noble families they came from, warning them if they weren't careful, someone might get the impression that the 3 of them share anonymous gossip as a way to scare and mislead others. This made the 3 snobs reel back in nervousness before Kenza took off. Even Hinako was impressed by how unfazed her father was, now writing the snobs' names on his fan. In the student council room, Lucas and Bert were intrigued by Grace's purchase of a new wand, so Kenza showed off his wand incorporated within his fan. He thought it was bothersome to walk around with both a wand and fan, so he had the family craftsman make it for him. Lucas wanted one too, until Bert pointed out how strange it'd be for a guy to carry a fan, so Anna suggested maybe fitting it into a briefcase or the spine of a book, and when opened, a magic circle written inside could pop out. Bert was drawn to this, imagining his 8th grader syndrome fantasies of using magic via a spellbook, all a part of the other 3's plan to entice him. Bert was seriously asking Grace to get in touch with her family craftsman, and Kenza was fine with it. Lucas then brought up how talented Anna and Grace were for getting selected for the magic exhibition in the first semester during their first year. Even August and Richard weren't that talented, having been chosen during their 3rd semester. And while Kenza explained he was lucky for having a special beast, it wasn't luck that he chose Anna to be his partner for the exhibition. Bert was green with envy, and if Anna didn't perform, he'd definitely take her spot next time. Kenza was joyful seeing such young rivals who respected each other. Lucas then switched from his whimsical demeanor to seriously tell Grace there may be problems for Anna in the future. The academy was part of aristocracy. Naturally, not every student around was as sympathetic and understanding as they were. Kenza could see it very clearly, with the 3 snobby girls chastising Anna, telling her to resign for being Grace's assistant. The snobs told Anna that Grace had told them she was tired of having the stench of peasant girl on her, that Anna was a huge nuisance who couldn't understand pecking order. They kept going on, until Anna brought up her family ran and owned a bakery, a very successful business, one that garnered many connections with people throughout the town. One piece of advice her family gave her was, be wary of anyone who claims to know that someone else is slandering you, and keep your distance from them, because if they are willing to vilify others behind their backs, they will undoubtedly do the same to you. Kenza was impressed. He could tell Anna was raised by loving parents who wanted the best for her. As a fellow parent, he had the utmost respect for them. Anna then began her march, telling the 3 to follow so that they could all ask Grace's true opinion of her. The snobs were frantic, trying to save their tails by saying Anna could get expelled or humiliated in front of everyone. But even if that were truly the outcome, Anna didn't care. She'd still cherish her friendship with Grace. She wouldn't lose even an ounce of respect or appreciation for her. Kenza and Hinako were in tears over how sweet Anna was. He suddenly stepped in, causing the snobs to panic, reminding them of what he had told them earlier. He then apologized to them, saying he had spoken far too roundabout earlier, leading to this misunderstanding. Hinako knew her father was trying to avoid chastising the three in order to prevent problems in the future, so he chose to make it seem like everything was his fault. That was his polished social skills at work. He made it clear that he thought there was no difference what social background everyone was from, because every student was here to learn. They were all kindred spirits meant to better each other. The ladies were all impressed by Kenza's magnanimity. He wanted them to all band together as students, and they totally agreed. Alright, another fun episode. Subscribe for next week's, but for now, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.